Before your day even begins, and before the outside world starts pulling at your attention, take a moment to pause. This isn't just another ordinary morning. It is a powerful point of alignment, a quiet shift between the version of you that existed before and the one that is ready to emerge now. The fact that you are hearing this is not random. Something deeper is directing your awareness, guiding your focus right here, right now, inward. Real transformation never starts from external change. It begins silently within. The moment you make a decision inside yourself. As you listen, let go of effort and pressure. You are not here to chase, fix, or force anything into place. Instead, you are meant to step into a state of assumption, where what you desire is no longer far away, but already part of your inner reality. This morning carries openness. This moment holds power, and today is already moving toward you in ways you cannot yet see. Each day begins long before external events unfold. It starts with the inner state you accept as true. Most people don't realize this and wake up carrying yesterday's emotions, old thoughts, and familiar expectations into a completely fresh day. But life doesn't begin outside. It begins with what you assume within. The first feeling you settle into quietly becomes the foundation for everything that follows. If you wake up expecting stress, delay, or struggle, your experience tends to reflect that state back to you. But if you begin your day with the assumption of ease, support, and smooth outcomes, life responds in alignment with that inner direction. That is why two people can live through the same circumstances but experience completely different realities. Their inner assumptions are not the same. When you consciously choose your morning state, you stop being someone who only reacts to life. Instead, you begin to guide it from within. You are no longer hoping the day goes well, you are deciding in advance that it will. And this does not require force or struggle. In fact, the more natural and relaxed the assumption, the stronger its effect becomes. Life responds more clearly to certainty than to effort. Think about how different your day feels when you simply assume things will unfold smoothly. There is less inner resistance. Conversations flow better. Unexpected solutions appear without being chased. Even challenges feel lighter because you are meeting them from a stable inner state rather than fear or tension. Your mind may try to bring up past difficulties or remind you of unresolved problems. But the purpose of a morning assumption is not to analyze what has already happened. It is to consciously choose the state you live from right now. The past only continues to influence you if you keep assuming it still defines you. The moment you shift internally, its hold begins to weaken. A strong morning assumption is not focused on specific events. It is rooted in identity. Instead of thinking, "I hope today turns out well," you quietly embody the idea, "I am someone whose days naturally unfold well." That small inner shift changes everything. Life starts aligning itself with the version of you that you believe you are. As your day progresses, this assumption begins to confirm itself. You notice small signs, moments of ease, unexpected help, calm where there might have been tension. These are not coincidences. They are reflections of the inner state you chose at the beginning of the day. Even if the outer world doesn't immediately change, you stay aligned with your assumption. What is forming internally always moves first before it appears externally. The state you hold within begins shaping outcomes in ways you may not recognize right away, but they unfold naturally over time. Choose your assumption with calmness, confidence, and ease. Because what you accept internally in the morning doesn't just influence your day, it becomes your day. Many people go through life trying to attract better situations, relationships, or opportunities. They wait, visualize, and hope for change, wondering why results feel delayed. But life doesn't respond to wanting, it responds to being. What shows up in your external world is not something you chase. It is something that reflects what you consistently embody inside. Your outer experience is like a mirror, always showing you the inner state you are living in. This is why effort alone often feels exhausting. You can work hard, repeat positive thoughts, or say affirmations. But if they are not matched with genuine inner belief, nothing shifts deeply. The mirror does not respond to words, it responds to identity. Once you understand this, responsibility changes meaning. It is no longer about blame, it becomes awareness of your power. You are not forced to chase outcomes or convince life to cooperate. Instead, you shift within and the reflection naturally follows. And the moment you recognize this, frustration begins to fade. You realize nothing is broken. Everything is working exactly as it should. The reflection is always accurate. So when you internally shift into feeling supported, stable, and aligned, your outer experiences begin to echo that change. People respond differently. Situations become easier. Timing improves. Not because the world changed first, but because you did. Trying to fix external problems without changing the internal state often leads to exhaustion. It is like trying to adjust a reflection without touching the source. Real change happens from within first, and everything else naturally reorganizes around it. But your inner assumption only changes when you change it from within. The reflection outside can only adjust once the source inside has shifted. You don't need to build complicated mental pictures or force yourself to visualize every detail of a new life. What truly matters is stepping into the feeling of a different identity. Pause and ask yourself gently, if what I want was already settled, how would I feel right now? That feeling, relief, calm, confidence, quiet certainty, that is the state you begin to embody. And as you hold it, your outer experience slowly starts organizing itself around it. The mind may try to interrupt this simplicity. It will ask about action, planning, and effort. Action is still part of life, but it no longer comes from stress or lack. It flows naturally from the state you are in. When your inner world is confident, your actions naturally reflect confidence. When your inner state is certain, your choices become clear without struggle. Action stops being a replacement for being and instead becomes an expression of it. There is real freedom in understanding this. You no longer feel the need to blame external conditions for delays or resistance. You stop waiting for approval from circumstances or people. You also stop measuring your progress only by what you can see immediately. Instead, your attention shifts inward, where you recognize that every consistent inner state eventually produces an external reflection. As this awareness grows, you naturally become more mindful of what inner states you allow to stay active in your mind. You start noticing how quickly moods, thoughts, and silent assumptions influence your day. Instead of fighting them, you gently redirect them. You understand now that you are not trying to get a better life at some distant point. You are expressing a fulfilled version of life right now, and everything outside will align with that expression. One of the most subtle traps of the mind is the belief that you must see proof before you can feel certain. Many people are conditioned to wait for evidence before they relax, before they believe, before they feel secure. But life doesn't respond in that order. It always begins with a decision first, and proof comes afterward. A real decision is not loud or dramatic. It is quiet and internal. It is the moment you stop questioning whether something will happen and instead accept it as already decided within you. From that point, everything inside you begins to shift. Your thoughts change, your emotional responses adjust, your expectations realign. Without forcing anything, you start living as someone who already knows things are unfolding in their favor. Waiting for external proof keeps you locked in uncertainty. It tells life that you haven't fully accepted the outcome yet, and life mirrors that hesitation by keeping the result at a distance. This is not punishment, it is precision. The outer world can only reflect what has been fully accepted inside. But when you decide internally first, something powerful happens. The constant need to check, worry, or control begins to fade. You stop looking outward for reassurance. Instead, you carry a quiet inner knowing that doesn't depend on validation. This state feels calm, grounded, and naturally magnetic. The mind may resist this approach. It might insist on logic, evidence, or safety before commitment. But certainty does not come from external facts. It comes from inner assumption. Facts are actually outcomes of previous assumptions, not the source of new ones. To create a different experience, you must be willing to step beyond what is currently visible and trust the unseen process that follows your inner state. When you begin operating from this space, life feels smoother. Decisions become clearer. Your presence becomes more stable. You no longer feel like you are chasing outcomes. Instead, outcomes seem to move toward you naturally. The outer world quietly follows the energy you consistently hold inside. This is why mornings hold such importance. They act as gateways where your internal state sets the direction for everything that follows. What you assume at the beginning of your day quietly shapes the people you meet, the situations you encounter, and the way events unfold. It is not coincidence or luck. It is alignment between your inner state and your external experience. You are not powerless in this process. You are not simply reacting to life as it happens. In truth, you are always participating in shaping it through what you accept within yourself. Life is not something happening to you, it is something responding through you. Every sustained inner state produces an outer reflection. When you consistently live from calmness, certainty, and ease, those qualities begin to show up in your experiences naturally. The real skill is not forcing change, but noticing the reflection and understanding what state created it. Once this becomes clear, life shifts from struggle to awareness. You stop constantly seeking validation, chasing outcomes, or trying to prove your worth. Instead, you begin to live as the identity you choose internally. Even challenges and delays lose their emotional weight because they no longer define your inner stability. At first, this kind of inner decision can feel unfamiliar or even uncomfortable. You are stepping away from relying on appearances and moving into trust in your internal direction. But this discomfort does not last. As the decision stabilizes, your nervous system relaxes. Inner tension fades, and life begins to quietly reorganize itself around your new internal conclusion. Proof does not arrive immediately, and it does not need to. The unseen always starts first. Conversations shift, timing adjusts. Opportunities begin to form in subtle ways long before they become visible. Then, at some point, what you once decided internally appears in your external world almost naturally, without force. If you ever find yourselves looking for signs, gently return to the decision instead. Signs are not the cause, they are only reflections. The cause is always the inner agreement you made. Reaffirm it softly, without pressure, with calm certainty. A true inner decision does not argue with doubt. It simply becomes stronger than it. Doubt may still pass through the mind, but it no longer defines your state. You are no longer trying to eliminate uncertainty. You are standing in something deeper than it. When you begin living this way, your experience of time also changes. What once felt delayed no longer feels heavy or frustrating. You trust the unfolding because within yourself, the outcome has already been accepted. You accept the outcome as already done, and that inner knowing becomes your foundation. This kind of trust is not passive waiting, it is active inner alignment. When you truly understand that life responds after your decision, you stop delaying your peace. You stop living in uncertainty or emotional suspense. You also stop constantly negotiating with life as if it owes you confirmation. Instead, you settle inwardly first, and then life naturally reflects that settled state back to you. You decide within yourself, and you allow reality to unfold in its own time. Once the decision is firm inside, the outcome is no longer something you question. It becomes something that simply has to show up in the physical world in its own way. Most people treat gratitude like a reaction, something they feel only after good things happen. But real gratitude goes much deeper than that. It is not dependent on external results. It is a state of being where you internally feel that nothing is missing, nothing is incomplete, and what you desire is already resolved within you. Because life mirrors your inner state so precisely, this feeling of inner completion becomes the starting point for outer change. When you feel grateful before anything appears in the physical world, you are not pretending or forcing positivity. You are simply living from the emotional position of fulfillment as if the experience is already finished. In that state, you are no longer waiting in the middle of a process. You are mentally standing in the end result. That is what makes gratitude so powerful. It removes doubt, resistance, and struggle at the same time. You cannot genuinely hold gratitude while also feeling lack or desperation. One dissolves the other. As soon as gratitude becomes natural, the inner tension around desire disappears. There is no urgency anymore, no constant checking for signs, no pressure to figure out when things will happen. You stop asking when, because gratitude quietly implies that it has already been handled. This silent inner message is far more powerful than words or repeated affirmations. It shifts your focus away from what is missing and places it on what feels complete. Without force, you begin to notice more harmony in your life, more flow, fewer delays, and less resistance. And as your attention changes, your lived experience begins to shift with it. What you consistently acknowledge inside starts expanding outside. This doesn't require intense emotional highs or forced positivity. Real gratitude is usually calm, grounded, and steady. It feels like relief, like finally relaxing after holding tension for too long, like exhaling into safety. And this quiet feeling is exactly what life responds to most consistently. When gratitude is present, the need to control outcomes naturally fades. You begin to trust how things are unfolding. You allow timing to take care of itself. This is not weakness or passivity, it is alignment. It means you are no longer mentally resisting your own desire. If doubts arise or your mind reminds you of what still seems missing, you don't need to argue with those thoughts. You simply return again to the feeling that it is already done. Over time, this becomes more stable, and as it stabilizes, life begins reflecting it back in subtle ways first, and then in more obvious ways later. Gratitude also changes how you see yourself. You are no longer someone hoping for change. You become someone living from completion. That shift affects your behavior, your tone, your decisions, and even your presence. People can sense it. Situations begin to respond differently. Life itself adjusts to match that internal identity. It is important to understand that gratitude does not mean ignoring problems or pretending challenges don't exist. It means refusing to give temporary circumstances more power than your inner state. You acknowledge what is happening externally, but you do not let it define what you know internally to be true. Your inner position remains rooted in fulfillment. As gratitude deepens, manifestation stops feeling like effort. It becomes more like allowing. You are no longer trying to force outcomes into existence. You are letting what has already been accepted internally show up externally in its own time. This is also why gratitude often brings results more smoothly than struggle or effort. It removes internal resistance completely. When you live in gratitude, you are no longer chasing life, you are receiving its confirmations. Life meets you exactly where your state is, and in gratitude, that state is already whole. Gratitude is not something reserved for the end of a journey. It is the doorway itself. When you step into it, your outer world naturally begins to align. Every inner shift begins with a decision. But what makes that decision real is consistency. Persistence is what allows it to take root. Many people experience a brief moment of belief or hope and then abandon it when the physical world doesn't immediately respond. But life does not respond to temporary feelings. It responds to the state you return to again and again. Persistence is not about forcing belief or pushing away doubt. It is about gently returning to your chosen assumption, even when appearances suggest otherwise. You are not fighting reality. You are simply refusing to let external conditions override your inner decision. When you stay loyal to your inner assumption, instead of reacting to temporary appearances, something subtle but powerful happens. Those external delays and fluctuations no longer shake your inner state. You begin to understand that what you see outside is always slightly behind what you have already accepted within. The outer world is not responding to who you are right now. It is reflecting who you were being internally a moment ago. That delay is not a mistake or a sign of failure. It is simply the space between inner shift and outer confirmation. Once you truly understand this, you stop misreading waiting periods as proof that nothing is working. Instead, you begin to see them as evidence that something has already started changing beneath the surface. As you continue holding your chosen assumption, your internal dialogue naturally transforms. You stop emotionally reacting to every small sign or the absence of signs. There is a quiet stability that begins to form within you. You feel anchored, and that anchoring brings harmony between your thoughts, emotions, and expectations. When everything inside you starts pointing in the same direction, your inner state becomes coherent, and that coherence carries real creative power. Doubt might still show up from time to time, but persistence means you don't entertain it. You notice it, and then you return gently to the state you have chosen without struggle or self-conflict. Over time, this repeated return makes the assumption feel natural. It stops feeling like something you are practicing and slowly becomes the way you see yourself and your life. At that point, you are no longer trying to change your reality. It begins to feel like you are simply living from a new identity. And from that state, change becomes inevitable. Life cannot keep contradicting a stable inner belief forever. The external reflection eventually has to adjust. You may notice people responding differently, situations shifting in unexpected ways, or new opportunities appearing. Often these changes don't feel dramatic. They feel normal, even natural, but they align perfectly with your inner shift. Persistence also protects you from emotional exhaustion. Instead of swinging between hope and disappointment, you stay centered. You stop measuring progress by daily outcomes or moment-to-moment signs. Instead, you trust the deeper process that is already in motion beneath the surface. Many people give up right before their inner assumption is about to fully express itself in reality. They check too often, look for confirmation too early, and in doing so, they pull themselves back into doubt. Persistence means you stop constantly checking and start quietly knowing. This knowing is not loud or emotional. It doesn't rely on external validation. It is calm, steady, and unshaken. It feels like patience, but not waiting in uncertainty. Rather, confidence in something that is already guaranteed within. As this persistence strengthens, effort naturally fades away. You no longer repeat ideas to convince yourself. Instead, you simply return to the feeling of completion whenever your attention drifts. That return becomes enough, and slowly, that inner assumption becomes your default way of being. When that happens, the outer world has no choice but to follow. What once existed only in thought begins to show up in experience. What was once internal becomes visible. The transformation is not driven by force but by consistency in your inner state. Persistence is the quiet power behind every real change. Not struggle, not intensity, but loyalty to what you have already accepted within yourself. Stay steady in it, stay calm in it, and allow life to reflect it back in its own timing. Take a moment and notice that nothing else is required right now. No extra proof, no additional effort. You have already made a decision inside, and that decision has already begun working beneath the surface. From here, life responds in its own natural way. Things begin to open without force. Solutions appear without chasing. What once felt delayed starts moving with ease and alignment. Carry this inner feeling with you as you move through your day, not with pressure, but with quiet certainty. You don't need to look for signs or constantly check for confirmation. The assumption has already been set, and life has already received it. Today is already aligned. Today is already working in your favor. And what you have accepted internally is now beginning to take form externally. Take a moment to appreciate yourself for choosing awareness instead of worry, for choosing inner stability instead of doubt. And remember this simple truth as you continue forward. The state you consistently hold within is always shaping the life you experience without. In the end, everything returns to a simple but powerful truth. Your inner state is always the starting point of your outer experience. Life is not something that randomly happens to you. It is something that consistently responds to what you have already accepted within yourself. Every thought you stabilize, every feeling you return to, and every assumption you quietly agree with becomes the unseen foundation shaping what unfolds in your reality. The delay you often notice between inner change and outer results is not a blockage, but a natural unfolding process where life is catching up to what you have already decided inside. When you truly understand this, you stop living in emotional reaction to appearances and begin living from conscious creation. You no longer depend on external signs to feel secure, because your inner certainty becomes the source of stability. You realize that waiting, doubting, and constantly searching for proof only keep you aligned with uncertainty, while calm inner knowing gently reorganizes everything around you. At this level of awareness, gratitude, assumption, and persistence are no longer techniques, they become a way of being. Gratitude places you in the feeling of completion. Assumption sets the direction of your reality, and persistence keeps you aligned even when appearances try to distract you. Together, they form a steady inner foundation that life cannot ignore. Slowly, without force or struggle, your outer world begins to reflect this inner consistency. Situations shift, timing improves, and what once felt distant starts to feel natural and inevitable. And as this unfolds, you begin to realize that nothing was ever truly outside of your control in the way you thought. It was always responding to your inner position. So the real conclusion is this: stop waiting for life to confirm your worth, your success, or your desires. Decide within yourself. Settle into that decision and remain faithful to it. Because once your inner world is aligned, the outer world has no choice but to follow.